Welcome into episode 258 of the Skate Podcast. I'm Brian DeFelice, joined by Bridget Prue and Scott McLaughlin. The Bruins had a season-long 4-game losing streak. It was not pretty, but they did put an end to it in Buffalo with a 4-1 win over the Sabres. We're going to get into our opening shifts, but before we do that, I am very proud, Bridget, to throw this over to you. You have some exciting news to share with some 2024 endeavors for you. Let's
yes I do. So I can finally announce that I've had in the works a few different things for my career. So back in December, I got hired for doing the Women's Bean Pot. So I'll be broadcasting all 4 of those games on Nessun, and we will have a great all-female crew. Sophia Yerksevich will also be part of that broadcast, hosting the intermission. So we'll be doing all 4 games for that, which is exciting because it'll be the first time the Women's Bean Pot championship game will be played at TD Garden. So I know everybody on the women's side of things is really happy about that, and I'm happy to be a part of that as well. And then after that, I actually got some even bigger news. I also got hired to be one of the broadcasters for the PWHL Boston team. So I just signed my contract yesterday, and that home opener for Boston is January 3rd. So we're almost at the season. It's less than a week away. So I'm really excited to be part of that league as it starts up. And now I have a lot more work, guys, but I'll still be here. I'll still be with you. I'm just going to be really freaking busy. So have fun trying to pick a time for us to record, because luckily I'm doing the home games only. If I was traveling, this would probably be impossible. But no, I will still be here doing the podcast, going to the Bruins games, doing my other 2 jobs at Hockey East and Providence. But 2 exciting little new job opportunities for me. So thanks for letting me announce that here.
Yeah, and I obviously echo Brian that it's awesome, and we're very proud of you, and extremely well deserved. Anyone who's listened to Bridget doing a college hockey broadcast knows she's very good at that. So just the Bean Pot for sure, but especially the PWHL, like that's really exciting. I'm excited for that league. I think I'm probably going to go to that opener. It's right down the street from me at the Songus Center in Lowell. But yeah, I mean, a lot of the best women's players in the world in that league. So that, hopefully they hit the ground running and give us some great women's hockey.
Yeah. It's going to be played at the Songus Center up in Lowell, which that's what Scott's referring to, really close to Scott where he lives. And actually the Toronto, Ottawa, and Montreal home openers are all sold out already. Like Toronto's entire season is sold out, believe it or not. And they're playing at the old Maple Leafs Gardens up in Toronto. So the Canadians are all over this. We gotta get the Americans on board too. But I know there was a lot of support for the Boston Pride, and hopefully that transfers over to the new Boston PWHL team.
Yeah, I was looking at tickets the other day, like just for the heck of it, and there are still some left. So if people want to go, they can still get tickets. But it wasn't a ton. Like there were a bunch of sections in the song. It's at least for the opener, so like limited availability. So definitely seems like there's some excitement, and that's obviously a much bigger venue than where the Pride played, which most of their games were in Warrior.
I love Songus. Songus is one of the best places to broadcast. It's also like newly renovated. I don't know actually when the renovations were, but it looks really nice. I love broadcasting there. And if it adds to anyone, come say hi to me. I will say hi to any of our podcast listeners. If you want to come up to me before the game and just say hello, I will be more than happy to. And I'll bring some Scott's Pop stickers. I'll hand those out. So I'm excited for that. It's coming up quick. Really cramming for it because a lot of information to try to get together about, all of these new players in this new league, but I'm excited for it.
Now, one thing you don't have to memorize just yet is team names, just cities, right? The teams
just
don't
cities.
Have
it's kind of like the Washington football team. It's like the Boston PWHL team. That is who I'm broadcasting for. Named to be determined. A lot is to be determined right now, but name. I want them to wait on the name though, because I want it to be a good name. It needs to take some time. Think about it. Make it good.
I know. What would be? I'm trying to think. Put us on the spot here. What a good name would be for a Boston team. Maybe we can think of one by the end of the podcast. Whatever.
Yeah, all right. We'll brainstorm. I'll bring it to my bosses later. Okay.
They should just, since they're in Lowell, they should just bring back the Lowell Lock Monsters. Just be the Lowell Lock Monsters.
Wouldn't it be the Boston Lock Monsters?
Yeah, it would have to be Boston.
That's what I'm saying. Just throw Lowell on there. We'll adopt them.
All right. So yeah, Bridget, that's awesome news and very exciting. So as it pertains to the skate podcast and the Bruins and recent games and news, yeah, let's just dive right into it. We had a few days off, obviously, for the holiday. So there's 3 or 4 games maybe that we missed. But we're going to talk about them now. So opening shifts and Scott, why don't we start with you?
Well, the vibes have totally changed for this team. The last time we recorded, I think they lost 2 in a row, so there's starting to be some negative vibes, and then they lost 2 more after that going into Christmas break in Winnipeg and Minnesota. Really just played poorly in those 2 games, especially the Winnipeg game. They started a little better against the Wild, but then fell apart. Seems like the Christmas break just came at a perfect time for them. A lot of the talk after practice today was just about kind of mentally resetting, getting their minds away from the game a little bit over Christmas, and then just coming back with a better attitude yesterday in Buffalo. Jim Montgomery even said that, he noticed himself kind of getting negative about things and was able to reset and kind of come back to the rink on Tuesday with a more positive approach. And then when they got on the ice for practice on Wednesday, they hit the ice to an awesome atmosphere at Warrior, with it being school vacation week. It was packed. It was standing room only. There were a ton of kids, obviously, on vacation. Signs, chanting, cheering, like reacting to big saves and goals. Like it was great. It was a great atmosphere, and I think the players fed off that. Montgomery said it was the best practice they've had in a long time. So yeah, it's amazing just what a couple days and a little bit of a reset can do for a team, because now it's seems like everyone's feeling really good about themselves, and that was not the case 4 days ago.
Yeah, actually, it's kind of funny. Those practices aren't they open to the public?
Yeah,
you can really just kind of head in there and enjoy them. And as as a hockey fan, if I lived closer and I was like a young kid, I would have gone all the time. And I have seen some cute moments there, because this was actually at their old practice rink, but Charlie McAvoy, there was this one fan who had autism, and Charlie McAvoy was just coming out of BU, and he was like his biggest fan at BU. And he like had a sign and was cheering for him, and Charlie came over and took some pictures with him. So like there's an opportunity to kind of get closer and see a little bit different side of the players a little bit closer up for people who want to go to practice. It's a good option. I will go to my opening shift, which is
quick before you do yours. It was full like an hour ahead of time, because I don't know exactly how the public finds out like what time practices are or whatever, but I think a lot of people thought it was an 11 a.m. practice, which most of theirs are. Today was actually a noon practice because they got back late from Buffalo, and I got there at 11:30, and it was already standing room only. And from what I understand, like it was packed by 11 a.m. So an hour ahead of time, and everyone just stayed and seemed to have a great time.
Yeah, no, I mean, go if you live there, walk right over. But yeah, so I'll get to my opening shift. So for me, a huge difference in this game after the break in Buffalo was the power play. And so they go 3 for 4 on the power play, and it was clicking better than it has been in the previous, I don't know how many games. It's been a while since it's really been clicking well. And it was really coming from that second power play unit too. Charlie Coyle and Jake DeBrusk working really well on the power play together on that second unit. Pasternak and Marchand were out there, I believe, for both of those power play goals, because Pasta stays out there for both units. Like he's out there pretty much the entire power play. But I think one of the main reasons why they were able to dominate the game the way they did was Buffalo took a lot of penalties, and the Bruins were able to capitalize on the power play.
Yeah, the power play was great. And, it's also It leads into another discussion about their 5-on-5 generation and lack thereof and lack of production there. But at least the power play and the special teams came through against Buffalo. For me, I think that this slide has been a good thing for the Bruins. I've seen it coming for a while. I talked about a few weeks ago how I didn't think this team was as good as their record indicated that they were. And at the time, that was the best team in the NHL, or maybe second. And I just, what I was watching just wasn't that. Even last night in the win in Buffalo, like all year, I haven't really seen a Bruins team that's just dominated possession 5-on-5 and really imposed their will. It's kind of, it's a team that has really strong goaltending, enough up front, obviously a good back end, but just kind of they do enough to get wins. But you don't always love the way they look doing it. And I think that's okay. Like I don't need the Bruins to be playing their best hockey in December as opposed to April. I just knew that this team wasn't as good as the record indicated, and I wasn't allowing myself to be fooled by it. And then here comes the 4-game losing streak where they looked pretty damn bad in that. And I'm thinking to myself, well, they're obviously not that bad, but they're somewhere in between. So this win against Buffalo, like, I just think it's important for them because it's important for them to get slapped in the face a few times throughout the course of the season, which they did. And honestly, the losing streak could have gone a couple extra games. I wouldn't really have cared. I didn't view Buffalo as a must win. Like I think that they have enough cushion in the standings. Like keep getting humbled, right? Keep learning tough lessons. But they did pull out the win in Buffalo. And so it seems as though that the break was a good reset for them. I just think it was a good thing for them. I can't watch this team and coast through a regular season thinking that they're, God's gift to this earth when they have deficiencies and they have to know to work on them. And so I think it was a good thing for them. I still think that the roster needs some upgrades. This current group, though, they needed this, I think. And whatever they do going forward, they'll be better off for it.
Yeah, and who agrees with you is the Bruins, because they've, whether it's Montgomery or players, they've all said something along similar lines as to what you were just saying, which is like, last year they didn't face really any adversity in the regular season, certainly not much of it. I think they had 1 3-game losing streak in there, but they've all kind of said like these are the things that you grow from as a team over the course of the season. And certainly Montgomery obviously has the most experience, has been around the game the most, so he knows it best. But he's talked about that, about how it's he said today, like, you hate it when you're going through it and you get into like a dark space where you wonder like, oh my God, are we ever going to get out of it? How do we turn it around? And then he said, when you come out the other side, you realize like you've learned the lessons and you've learned things about yourself and how you need to play. And, that you're not going to just go out and dominate like last year's team did. He used the word overwhelm. He said, last year they were able to just overwhelm opponents, and they can't do that this year. Like it's a difference between winning on talent and winning on hard work. And last year's team, I think, worked hard, don't get me wrong, but they won a lot of games on talent. And that's not a luxury that this year's team is really going to have. Like if they don't work hard, they're going to lose to pretty much anyone. And if they're playing a good team like Winnipeg, who is rolling, they're going to get their doors blown off. And like that can be a really humbling experience.
Yeah. And I think Buffalo was probably a great team to come out of the break against. And because, they're not a terrible team. We thought maybe they might even be, a wild card team this year at some point. It's not too late for them still. But they also were without
It's getting late. Getting late
it's
early,
getting a
though.
little late, but they haven't given up yet. It was a setback for them though that they were without Tage Thompson, who didn't play for a personal reason. And that's obviously a huge part of their 5-on-5 offense and their power play. And to just kind of like expand on my lead a little bit more into the special teams as a whole, the Bruins killed off all 6 penalties that they got. Once again, some weird officiating. Marchand getting consecutive penalties because he litters the penalty box and freaks out because he doesn't like the cross-checking call. And, you know, some of that has to be taken out of the game, though I do know why he was so pissed, and can completely understand that. And, you know, maybe the ref should have just looked the other way on that. Some of them will, some of them won't. But the Bruins ended up taking 6 penalties. And there was at one point in the game where it was like so many penalties, both sides consecutively, where it was like 5-on-4, 4-on-4, 4-on-3, 5-on-3, 5-on-4. Like it just kept going back and forth. So special teams was all over the place in this game, but the Bruins definitely won the special teams battle.
Yeah, you had the rare situation where the Bruins took a penalty and the manpower didn't change because they literally couldn't take another player off the ice.
Like, yeah, they all already only had 3 people on the ice.
So yeah, that definitely got bunched up with the penalties there in the middle. But you're right, Bruins special teams was dominant. And Brian, you mentioned 5-on-5. Like, I know the Bruins end up only scoring once 5-on-5, but I did think they, for the most part, controlled play at 5-on-5 as well. And I thought it was one of their better 5-on-5 games recently, especially like the middle 6 lines. I thought the Marchand, Coyle, DeBrusk line, obviously they scored 2 power play goals with DeBrusk setting up Coyle. But I thought 5-on-5, that was maybe the best game in a while that like a Marchand Coyle line has played. I've talked about how like I didn't think they had very much chemistry at times and didn't really seem to be clicking. I thought they looked pretty good. And then the third line, sort of the mismatched line of Van Riemsdyk, Frederick, and Heinen, I thought that line had a good game too. So some encouraging signs there as well, even though, special teams was the big story.
And, not for nothing, and I know we already talked about Charlie Coyle and how good he is on the penalty kill, but he also was a huge part. Like you said, he was great 5-on-5. He scores 2 power play goals. He also did a great job on the penalty kill. So did Jake DeBrusk. Just because of the conversations we've had around Jake DeBrusk this season, and in particular recently, I just kind of find myself watching him, like trying to watch the play, but also trying to watch him specifically. And, where he's working, where he's hustling, just to like make sure I'm not crazy and make sure I'm not like missing him, like slowly going through a puck. Like from what I saw on his penalty kill, he was working really hard. On the power play, he was working hard. I just thought he had a really, he had a game where you can't go, oh, you should have hustled a little harder. To me, he looked like he was working hard in all strengths, power play, penalty kill, even strength. And we'll get to him a little bit later, but I just wanted to point that out about like the special teams. Him and Coyle, when they're the 2 forwards on the ice, I thought they did really well.
Yeah, I agree with that. So another thing too that I think is pretty evident, I think, is right now the way that this roster is constructed personnel wise. I don't think it's wise to have Marchand and Pastrnak on the same line. I just don't think there's not enough high end probably skill to load up just one line because I just think it depletes the rest of the lines, right? So in a situation like last night where you have them on separate lines, I think that's good. I think it's better for the Bruins. I don't know if you guys feel the same way about keeping them apart.
Yeah, I agree. And part of the reason I agree is that when Marchand and Pastrnak have been together, that line hasn't been dominant. Like, in fact, it's struggled at times. So unless you're loading them up and getting like a truly dominant top line that can take over games, then I might understand it, because there's going to be times where you might just need that. You might just be in a game where you just need your stars to take over, and if they're all on the same line, that helps you do it. But if they're not really playing like that and they're kind of up and down, and they have a couple good games and then a couple quiet ones, like that really doesn't do you any good. So yeah, you might as well spread them out and try to get, even if you don't have one dominant line, at least a couple lines, or ideally 3, even 4, that can chip in and create chances on any given night.
So I have a question for you guys regarding center ice. And I know we talked about at length with Bridget. Do you have something to say right there? No, you're just yawning?
No, but I know what you're going to here, and I want to talk about.
Okay.
I know what you're going to. I'm reading your mind.
Yes, we have that chemistry. I've been line mates for a couple of years now. We're like the perfection pod. So Pavel Zacha gets moved to the wing for Morgan Geekie. Now, Matt Poitras in juniors right now, so he's not an option. Georgii Merkulov is in Providence and hasn't played a game for the Bruins. So as we currently speak, he's not an option. As we currently speak, though, when you listen to
this, a little more on that later too.
Yeah, a little more on that later for sure.
Time out. Every time we say something like this, we'll record, we'll post, and then it'll be like 5 minutes in, like 5 minutes after I put it up, it's like Georgii Merkulov.
Did we jump ahead?
We're gonna talk about. I want to talk about Merkulov, so we're gonna get there. I won't forget, Bridget.
Should we just jump ahead and say, so Merkulov's been called up, and what do you guys think about that?
Just pretend, yeah, probably.
But even if Merkulov,
like choose your own adventure. Listen to these next 10 minutes if the Bruins call him up on Friday. Skip over that if they don't.
Right, exactly. But even if he were to get called up, right, at the NHL level, he's still an unknown, so you can't even rely on that, right? But the Bruins move Zacha to the wing. Obviously, Coyle's playing like a top 2 center this year. You know, Zacha point wise is, but borderline. But I guess my question for you guys is, like, do they envision Zacha being on the wing long term with this current grouping of forwards? I don't think he's too good of a talent to not have as one of your top 2 centers. Like, you don't want Morgan Geekie as one of your top 2 centers, do you?
Well, that actually was what I was gonna say. And I think that what they're kind of saying is Morgan Geekie right now is playing more comfortably as a center than you know, first of all, than he is playing as a wing, but maybe even more so than what they've seen from Zacha at center. So I think the fact that Morgan Geekie has had such a strong game since, first of all, Zacha was out and now Poitras is in World Juniors, I think he's kind of almost like digging out that center role. And I do think he played decent on the wing, but you can tell a difference in his confidence when he plays at center. So I think that bumps Zacha over, which sounds a little bit counterintuitive because we talked about this maybe being their long-term option for the center, top line center, or at least second line center. So it changes that. And I think I have a different opinion than you two about whether or not I want Zacha to play wing, because I know you guys aren't really for it, but I actually like when he plays left wing. And I think that it opens up different combinations that, you know, you can maybe try out. And there was one time earlier in the season, and we're talking about when Poitras comes back here, that they had Zacha, Poitras, pasta. And I would like to see that again at some point. So, like, just the fact that both Geekie and Zacha can be versatile and play either wing or center, I think helps.
Yeah, So Montgomery was asked about this on Thursday, and I think he was specifically asked, like, do you want to take a longer look at Zacha on the wing? And he said, not necessarily. What I want to take a longer look at is Geekie playing between Zacha and Pastrnak, which I don't have a problem with. Again, you're still in the first half of the season, so I've said this before with like line changes. I have no problem seeing lots of different combinations and people in different spots, and just see what you have and give things a few games and see how it looks. Like, it's good to know all these things going forward down the line. You know, hey, can Morgan Geekie move up in the lineup and center these guys? Can Pavel Zacha move over to the wing and, you know, play the way he played on the wing last year? Or is he so set at center now that he's going to struggle on the wing? Like, those are just good things to figure out. So I don't have an issue with it. I would say, talking longer term, I guess what concerns me with this current lineup is, like, if Zacha's on the wing, as good as Morgan Geekie has played recently, I still have a hard time imagining him being a legitimate top 2 center long term on a team with Stanley Cup aspirations. Maybe I'm just underestimating him. Maybe he'll blow me away, but I just don't see him as that kind of player long term. What I do look at is, hey, when you slide Pavel Zacha over to the wing, boy, doesn't that open up a spot for someone like, I don't know, Elias Lindholm? But that's obviously down the road as well. I don't think that trade's happening now. So, yeah, I think with the current roster, I still think you're probably at your best with Zacha at center, but I have no problem in the shorter term seeing how this looks.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think I agree with all that, actually. Like, I don't have an issue with it right now. You kind of it's a long season. You want to see different looks and find different ways to motivate guys and reward guys and send messages to guys, right? It's kind of a indictment on Zacha a little bit too, that he had to get pushed to the wing, because if he was lighting it up, they probably wouldn't have moved him. But I don't see Morgan Geekie as somebody who has the foot speed to keep up with top centers in this league when the hockey matters most in the springtime. I just don't see it. It's not that he's not a smart player or a crafty player or knows where to go, where to be. I just think again, Scott, you just said it, maybe I'm underestimating him too. But visually, I don't see the foot speed there to keep up with the top centers in the Eastern Conference if you were to match up against them. So if this is the second half of the season, for me, Zacha has to be a top 2 center with Coyle and or Poitras or whatever. And that's that's without knowing any potential trade down the line as well.
I do think, though, that, like you mentioned, you've said underrated a few times about Geekie. I think he is, and I think he still has more to show. And I think he's been looking for a team to actually give him a chance with his skill set, because I feel like when he was in Seattle, which, by the way, he got taken in the expansion draft and ended up over there, and they never really found a true role for him. He was playing on the 4th line. So when he has this opportunity to play up in the lineup, he's probably thinking to himself, this is a great opportunity, and I can actually show what I can do. And he signed a 2-year contract, $2 million a year with the Bruins. They found somebody that was better than what the rest of the league thought he was. So that's exactly what you're trying to do in the offseason, is identify someone that you can bring in and afford, which, $2 million, they could afford that contract. They didn't have a lot of cap space, but that was actually going to outperform what people thought of him. And I think he has so far. So I think the bar was low. They expected it to be low, but he's kind of just moving it up and up and up and showing that he can do better than just play, 4th line center. He can play anywhere in the lineup.
Yeah, and in some ways it's a little similar to the bet that they made on Zacha, which is talented player, has kind of been moved around, maybe been a little lower in the lineup on another team, and you give him a little more of an opportunity and see if he can run with it. And obviously it paid off with Zacha, again, taking the bigger picture of can he be your number 1 center long term, just in terms of he's clearly established himself as a top 6 forward, whether you think he's a center or wing. And that was an opportunity he really wasn't getting in Jersey. So yeah, Geekie, not as highly touted. Zacha was the number 6 overall pick. Geekie, I think, was a 3rd round pick, maybe, but always had talent, put up big offensive numbers in juniors. But yeah, just ended up lower in the lineup in Carolina, lower in the lineup in Seattle. And we talked about it over the summer. I mentioned sort of, the analytics showed that he, in terms of 5-on-5 points per 60 minutes, there were really good signs there, especially when it came to playmaking, assists. And you wondered, hey, can that translate? If we give him more 5-on-5 minutes, can he continue to produce at that kind of rate against tougher competition, playing with better players? And you didn't really see it early on this season, in part because he moved around a little bit, then got hurt. But yeah, you do see it now as he gets an opportunity on the top line next to Pasternak, on the top power play unit. You see him putting up more points. So, like I said, I still have questions about whether that is sustainable long term. But for now, yeah, great for him. He's definitely taking advantage of an opportunity.
Okay, so we have a couple of more topics to get to, but before that, maybe we should shift over to the who's up and the who's down. So I think you might not hear this too often, so I would open your ears nice and wide. But for Brian, Jake DeBrusk's up right now. Jake DeBrusk.
Whoa.
He's up.
Whoa.
He's up. He's awake. He's awake. The alarm went off. He pressed snooze for, the entire season. But here we are in December, December 28th, and he woke up. No, I'm just kidding. But he did get 2 assists against Buffalo, and I could be a cynic, guys, and sit here and say, well, the second assist he got, I mean, Charlie Coyle was trying to pass it to the ref. It wasn't even meant to be a goal. And that they were both assists came on the power play. I could be a cynic and say that, but
you are a cynic. And you just did say that.
I could be a cynic and say that, but I won't be. I will sit here and say that that he did get 2 assists on those plays, and he was doing it because he made the right plays. The first assist, he took the puck around the net and it's a smart play. It's a skillful play, a skillful pass to Coyle in front. But what I like about the second assist, all joking aside, is that, for all DeBrusk knows, when he passed that puck to Coyle snaps it in for a nice goal. But he did win a race to that loose puck, and he did absorb body contact in getting that pass to Coyle. So why I was being facetious earlier about the being cynical, but it's doing what it takes to make a smart play. And so Scott could probably say to me, like, well, Brian, he's made a ton of plays this year where he's made plays like that, but the puck didn't end up going in for somebody, and it could have led to potential points in the past. And that's fair. That is fair. But I will say last night the assist happened, so you have to give him credit for finding the score sheet.
Yeah, I mean, along those lines, like, I think I mentioned this at the time, but there was one game, it's either like early in the 4-game losing streak or maybe just before that, where he set up Pastrnak for 2 chances, almost exactly like the ones Coyle buried. And, oddly enough, like, Coyle buries those. And in that other game I'm talking about, Pastrnak didn't. Like, I think the goalie made a great save on one, and I think he might have shot it like into his chest on the other. But yeah, I was talking to Charlie Coyle after practice on Thursday and asked him, like, because I had talked to him last week, asked him about, like, DeBrusk, kind of slumping or whatever. And I'd asked him, like, do you find that, because by the way, Coyle snapped his own 6-game pointless streak. Both of them had gone 6 games without a point. I was like, can setting up goals, like, bring that confidence back the same way goals can? And he was like, I think so, especially when it's like the direct primary assist like that, like when you're the one making the key pass to set up the goals. So yeah, if you're the Bruins, obviously you hope that does get DeBrusk going and that he feels a little better about himself. And it's, you also hope that, like, what he realizes is the revert, right? Like, how did you get an assist on those goals? Because Charlie Coyle was right in front with his stick on the ice ready to shoot. Like, Jake DeBrusk can also be in those situations, be set up right in front with his stick on the ice ready to shoot, and someone else sets him up. So just all around, like, I think good to just see plays like that work for him, where it's like, oh, okay, like, we got the puck to the front, someone was there, and they buried it and, scored from really in close. Now, if you see DeBrusk score a couple of those, like, that's sort of the last step now that's needed. Is great. He's setting up line mates, got a couple points. That's good. Like, you want those points on your, next to your name. Now it's got to be, okay, still needs the goals. He still needs some finishes like that himself.
Yeah. And so we've kind of already touched on 2 guys that I would also say were ups, and Morgan Geekie's one. We've already talked a little bit about him, but just to expand a little bit further, goals in back-to-back games, 3 points in the last 4 games, just the, the eye test, going to the right parts of the ice, using his body the right way, going to the net. Morgan Geekie, kind of self-explanatory, is an up. And the other one is Charlie Coyle, who we talked about being the goal scorer on those plays that DeBrusk made. And he needs to get back into that, the way that stretch that he was playing earlier in the season, where once again, we did the segment and we were, praising what Charlie Coyle was able to do, but he has the skill set in front of the net too. Like, we've seen him used there on the power play, not as often recently, but still occasionally. So he has that skill set right in front of the net, that he can roof it like that. He's a good goal scorer. And now you kind of see him being the leader of that line. Marchand, we mentioned him playing next to Marchand. Sometimes Marchand takes it over, but you'd love to see Coyle take it over too at different times and use his skills to, because he can just as easily set up DeBrusk in front of the net or Marchand in front of the net. So you can really see the potential of that line. They just need to play more to it. And you saw it. I know we mentioned this was on the power play, but, even strength, don't see why you couldn't do it even strength either. Obviously, you have a little bit more space to work with and an advantage on the power play, but, you could do those same things 5-on-5. So I think Coyle was back on the up, like you mentioned. Having a 2-goal game is always good. Making an impact on the power play is always good. And like we mentioned, he was great 5-on-5 and shorthanded as well.
Yeah, I agree with all that. And up for me is Mason Lohrei, who scored the first goal Wednesday night. Made it. Danton Heinen gets a poke check. Lohrei makes a good play to step up, win possession, dishes over to Trent Frederick for the zone entry, and then doesn't just pull up or stop at the point. He drives the net. Van Riemsdyk throws a shot on, and he's perfect spot to bury a rebound. I think Mason Lohrei in general has been playing better and looking more confident and comfortable at the NHL level. And that probably flew a little bit under the radar during the losing streak, where I think, and we were maybe even guilty of this, like, just like, oh, well, the whole team stinks. But to me, like, the Bruins' problems during that losing streak really started with their top players not playing well. It wasn't really an issue of depth to me. Like, I didn't look at like their third pairing or fourth line and be like, wow, these guys suck, you can't play them. Like, no, it was like Pasternak and Marchand and McAvoy aren't showing up and playing like we know they're capable of. So I think Lohrei actually had a couple decent games during that stretch. And just to like put some numbers on it, Lohrai's first 12 NHL games, when he was on the ice at 5-on-5, Bruins got outscored 13-7 and had just 40% of the shots on goal. In his last 6 games, when he's been on the ice at 5-on-5, Bruins have outscored their opponents 5-1 and have 56% of shots on goal. So it's really completely flipped. That the goal's nice. Him being involved offensively is nice. Him being on the ice for just 1 goal against in the last 6 games, really encouraging, given where he was earlier this year.
Yeah, he's +4 in his last 6 games. So before that, he'd been putting up mostly, -1 or even. So, he's putting up, plus numbers in the last 6 games. And also you see his intelligence in terms of offense. Like on that goal that he scored, which not for nothing was the first goal of the game and kind of sparked a little bit of offense after that. He saw what was happening. He saw that there was going to be a shot, and he was either going to be open for like a backdoor pass or taking the puck on the rebound. And he saw that it was open and he took it. He's got a smart offensive mind, and not every Bruins defenseman would have drove to the net there. But he knew he could do it and that there were guys behind him, and he made the right play. And it's perfect. I don't know if Van Riemsdyk meant to pass it off the pads. It kind of looked like he did. But, maybe that was just an honest, like, low shot trying to score 5-hole or something by Van Riemsdyk. Maybe it was intentionally trying to pop the rebound out to whoever was crashing the net. But it's the right move to make, and it's a nice finish as well. So you see that he can bring more offense than some of the other guys that they've called up, because we talked about Witherspoon and what he brings physically. We talked about Ian Mitchell being, offensive-minded as well. But Mason Lohrei has that skill set, and you saw it on display.
Yeah, and I think when the Bruins need offense from your back end, and they haven't been getting much of it this year, he's been one of the players to provide it. I think he's kind of earning his way onto this team. You can't tell me that Matt Grzelcyk is an upgrade over him right now just because of the way Grzelcyk has played so far this year. It's been kind of just not the Grzelcyk that we're accustomed to. Combine that with the fact that Lohrei is producing and it is getting better game in and game out. And then, forward's a completely different player, right? So I just think that I think the Bruins. I think Lohrei is he's kind of a necessity. I think right now. I think earlier in the year it was kind of a luxury to have him. Right? You were like, well, the Bruins have McAvoy and Lindholm and Carlo and Grzelcyk and whatever, but they don't need Lohrei right now. But I think they kind of do need him right now for a lot of different reasons. I think in that losing streak, like, yeah, Scott, you mentioned it. It wasn't necessarily like the defense. I mean, everybody was playing not great hockey, but I think when you're forced to defend as much as the Bruins decor was forced to defend, there's only so much bend before you break. And I think that like when your offense isn't carrying enough weight on the other side of the ice and even in a playing field, it's like you're skating uphill. So I think that had something to do with it as well. But yeah, I've liked Lohrei's game. I think he's a great choice for an up. Bridget, do you have a follow up on that?
Well, I was just gonna say, and this may be like somewhat of a tangent, but Derek Forbort, you mentioned that there was no update on him, but he's not. It doesn't look like he's close right now, as of practice on Thursday morning. So Grizzly,
he hasn't. We haven't even seen him skating before. So no. As far as we know, he hasn't even started skating yet.
No, and you know what? It started to kind of creep into my mind watching the Buffalo game last night that as time goes on and as he's out longer, I feel like you notice his absence more. Like in the sample size of games that the Bruins have been without him, I know he's not the most flashy defenseman that they have. He's on their bottom pair, but he is another big body and he is a great penalty killer. And I feel like in some of those losses that the Bruins had or the winless streak that they were on, they really could have used someone like that because they're offensively, they weren't producing, but when they have Forbort as such like a strong defenseman on the back end and they have the strong goaltending, sometimes we've talked about it many times that can make up for some of the flaws that the team has. So I feel like you kind of really noticed it in that stretch of that winless stretch. And I just bring it up. I know it wasn't really to do with the most recent game, but we also didn't talk about the 2 games before break. And I just feel like the longer you go without Forbort, you are missing a certain element of steadiness on the back end and especially on the penalty kill.
Yeah, I was gonna say, it's like to me, it's. I do think maybe the penalty kill was missing him. I think there was a stretch there where over like 5 games they gave up 5 power play goals on like 14 chances, which obviously is like way below the standards that they've set on the PK. But I mean, I don't want to sound like I'm like downplaying Forbort, but I just think they can. If other guys play relatively well, I think you can overcome it. I especially think you'd be fine 5-on-5, and you might have to change your penalty kill a little bit, but I think you should still be able to kill penalties with what you have left.
But like Witherspoon,
they didn't just go 6 for 6, and I know Buffalo's missing Tage Thompson, so obviously that's a big factor there. But
yeah,
certainly a step in the right direction, anyways.
But like, I understand Witherspoon like is kind of a big body replacing him, but he's not Derek Forbort. Like we at least need to give Forbort credit that he's a better defenseman than Witherspoon, and they're better with him in the lineup than they are with Witherspoon or Mitchell in his place. And like we like what we see from Lohrei, but you have these 3 guys that have been filling in that none of them have officially like taken a spot. And I don't know. I've thought about the absence of Forbort over the past few games, especially during the losing streak. I just wanted to bring it up because especially now that we kind of have this idea that it's going to be a pretty long-term situation for him to recover. So, does it pop up as an issue as we go along?
Yeah. I mean, in my mind, I'm not even looking at Lohrei's replacing Forbort. I'm looking at him replacing Grzelcyk because they're like-minded players. Like it's kind of, yeah, like each defenseman has a different role to play. And I don't think Lohrei's filling the type of role, whether it's Derek Forbort or somebody like him. I'm looking for him to fill that role of, the offensive defenseman who can move the puck and make things happen in transition and be better defensively because you're getting the puck out of your own zone, which is what Grzelcyk has been able to do for a long time. He's just been having a down year, and we just nobody can really argue that at this point. Now, Scott, what is Charlie McAvoy not doing right now that when he's playing on top of his game he is doing.
Well, I don't think he's been as involved offensively, and it seems like defensively he's been out of position like more than usual, and has allowed like some gaps in the defensive zone where, again, because the Bruins play zone defense, like sometimes it's hard to tell exactly who's at fault. Like, was there miscommunication? Did someone not pick someone up? But it seems like he's been around the puck or like near guys who have gotten golden scoring opportunities, especially during the losing streak, where I thought, honestly, like I thought that was some of the worst hockey we've seen from McAvoy in a while. And then I thought he was a little better against Buffalo on Wednesday, but I still don't think that was like a great game for him. And I'm sure playing with different partners is part of it. Grzelcyk's been in and out of the lineup, and as we said, like Grzelcyk hasn't been playing his best either. You know, Lorai's still learning, and I think when he gets put with McAvoy, like they're still learning each other and learning chemistry. Hampus Lindholm's gotten bumped up to play next to him a couple times. Like, so I'm sure that's part of it, is there's just things aren't as settled as maybe he's been used to over the last few years. But if you're the number one defenseman, you're one of the 5 best defensemen in the world, which I think we all believe McAvoy is when he's on top of his game. You know, it is on you to like find a way to make it work. And I just think there's been, you know, probably like a handful of games now recently where it just doesn't really seem to be working when he's on the ice. Like they're getting pinned in, they're giving up chances. He's not getting as many chances at the other end. I'm not super worried about him unless like we find out that, you know, that shoulder injury that he suffered right before Christmas, where he left the game and then quickly came back, and it doesn't seem like that's anything to be concerned about. He hasn't missed any time. Unless you find out like that's lingering and affecting his play or something. I'm not concerned big picture, long term, but right now I do think McAvoy's kind of in a bit of a rut and just not playing the way that we're used to seeing him play.
I thought he started the season really strong too. Like I remember us talking early on that he and Pastrnak had just been really excelling as leaders, as young leaders, with Bergeron and Krejci moving on, and Foligno and other leaders. Obviously, Pastrnak has continued to produce at an all world level, but that's also kind of concerning too, because like you did see that high level of play earlier on this year.
Yeah, I mean, and to talk about Lohrei being an up and McAvoy, you know, maybe being a little bit of a down. They both have 3 goals this season. McAvoy obviously has a lot more points. I think he has like 16 assists or something like that on top of the 3 goals. But, you know, he can usually be looked at for a little bit more goal scoring production. I think he's only kind of like slightly down compared to, you know, some of the other people we've talked about this season. He hasn't been playing his best, but he hasn't been playing terribly. And he's also out there with Mason Lohrei now. And you know, the pairs have been switched around with the different injuries that have been happening on the back end. So I don't really have much more to add about McAvoy.
There was one play against Winnipeg too that just kind of stood out to me. Like McAvoy he's supposed to shut plays down, and he's supposed to shut plays down in his own end and create plays in the offensive zone. And there was a play against the Jets where they were in transition, and he just kind of went for like a backdoor saucer pass floater to, I forget who it was, crashing the net.
Zacha. It was Zacha
crashing the net. And like I get it wasn't the worst play in the world. It in fact, had it connected, it would have been a pretty sick goal. But it didn't connect, and it was kind of a soft play. It goes off the boards, and then it goes the other way. And the Jets, like, it was kind of a net mount scramble. And even then, McAvoy was, like, late getting back. And it's like, well, that turnover happens because of a pass that you misfired on. And now you're getting back kind of late, and you're getting out-muscled. It was just a play that just kind of like showed me he's just not playing to his standards right now. And that one play kind of was a microcosm, a little bit of some of his recent play, but a little bit of.
And so I didn't even look this up before I mentioned McAvoy as a down, but while you guys were talking, I just picked a date, December 1st, and looked up McAvoy's 5-on-5 numbers since then. So he's played 7 games in the month of December because he did miss a few with the other injury that he suffered on that like hit to the face. In the month of December, in 7 games, Charlie McAvoy has been on the ice for 7 goals against at 5-on-5, 1 goal for, -6 at 5-on-5, worst on the team. And like if you pull back to like chances, shot attempts, it's not that bad, but like 47% Corsi, 46% expected goals, like those just aren't Charlie McAvoy numbers. That's when he's playing his best. The Bruins are dominant when he's on the ice. So yeah, it's always nice when the numbers back up what I was already feeling.
Yeah, and it. Of course he had to go there. It's he uses it as like, this is why I'm right and you're wrong. But yeah, no, those are good numbers though, Scott, because it kind of illustrates why and how important McAvoy's play is to the team in terms of winning, because it's no coincidence that their winless streak comes at the same time that Charlie McAvoy's numbers aren't as good as they normally are. So that's definitely a big factor in it. Does anyone else have an up or down? I think we got to most of ours, right? We good? Scott, looking at you.
Nothing definitive, but like we kind of touched on Zacha a little bit. So, having get sent to wing, he's been a little quiet. And then, I don't think they've been the problem at all. I think they've just been one of a bunch of players that kind of were amidst a slump. But I also haven't thought that Carlo and Lindholm have been particularly elite for their standards. Certainly not during the losing streak. But again, that to pick on a couple of players over the course of a long, 4-game losing streak is kind of unfair because everybody kind of was on the rope.
I was gonna say I agree during that losing streak. I would also note I thought Wednesday night was the best game Hampus Lindholm's played in a while. I thought he looked really good Wednesday night in Buffalo. I don't think he ended up with any points, right? He didn't get anything. No, but he helped create chances. I think you saw him start several transitions with clean breakouts, and you saw that skating that we saw, when he first got to Boston and early on last season, where like he makes one move to get past the first forechecker and then just takes off and gets separation. And like that to me is like the sign of him being on top of his game, is like pulling away from guys in transition. And you saw that a few times Wednesday night. So he had like one totally dominant shift in the offensive zone where he like deked around a forward at one point. He made a couple of really nice passes that led to scoring chances. One was like a great, I don't even know like how he saw the lane. It was like a seam pass through traffic to Marchand. So yeah, he would be an up for me just looking at Wednesday. I agree with you that pairing also was not great during the losing streak.
And you know what? We could add to this. It's not who's up, who's down in terms of play, but one last thing to talk about, Georgii Merkulov potentially coming up to Boston, filling in as a center while Poitras is away, and potentially if they decide to keep Zacha at wing. Scott, you have a little bit more on this. You were at practice. You kind of got a chance to talk to some people about this.
Yeah, well, there had been some speculation, I think, that so preface this by saying Georgii Merkulov remains on fire in Providence, had another 2 points, a goal and an assist Wednesday night. He now has 9 goals and 7 assists in his last 16 games. He's up to like either second or third in the league in the AHL in scoring. There was the holiday roster freeze, which ended at midnight early Thursday morning. So there was some speculation that like he might get called up Thursday. He didn't. Friend of the pod, Mark Allred, tweeted at me that he thinks he's still getting called up tomorrow, Friday. So that's something for people to keep an eye on. The Bruins practice at 11 a.m. Friday. So I guess we'll see if Merkulov's there, if they announce a call up before then. I think.
Let me check Twitter real quick, guys, because
Yeah,
they like to.
Right, I was gonna say, when they're gonna announce it is 15 minutes after we log off. But no, you could look at Wednesday night and be like, all right, well, the team bounced back, so do you really need a call up? To me, at this point, it's almost beyond even like, do the Bruins need to call someone up? And I think Georgii Merkulov has just forced their hand. Like, he's playing so well that, to me, it just seems like almost crazy not to give him a chance, especially during this period with Matt Poitras gone to World Juniors. Like, it's the perfect time to call him up and throw him at, put him at third line center and see how he does. And if it turns into something longer than that, awesome. If there's some areas where he struggles and you have to send him back down after a few games, then that's fine too. But like, at least you rewarded this incredible heater that he's on right now.
Yeah, the Bruins are far removed from, well, I shouldn't say far removed, but they're definitely removed from the days of Savard, Bergeron, Krejci up the middle, or Bergeron, Krejci, and Chris Kelly or Charlie Coyle, or insert, really, really adequate third line center here. Like the Bruins right now, center ice, it's very much not set in stone. I mean, we were just talking about Morgan Geekie replacing Pavel Zacha, who's your assigned number one center to start the year. Charlie Coyle has spent time on the quote unquote third line at times this year for Matt Poitras, who's an 19-year-old rookie who's now playing at World Juniors. And it's like, there's opportunity to be had if the Bruins aren't stubborn to see who's the best fit for this team at center ice. And yes, he has absolutely forced their hand, in my opinion, for that reason, because of his own play and the lack of certainty up on the main roster. And yeah, Scott, you mentioned, I think he's fourth in the league in scoring down in the AHL. And I just think, like I said last week, what's the point of having the farm system if you're not going to reward players that you feel as though can help you on your main club right now that have earned the opportunity? And I think he's earned the opportunity to get a look. And so we'll see. We'll see if it comes down. Yes, in typical skate pod fashion, it probably won't break until after, like you said, but we'll keep our ears to the ground.
Yeah, I mean, the point still remains. Like, if he's up, we're kind of already talking about what he could do. And I'm thinking maybe you put him on the third line with like a JVR, Merkulov, Frederic line. Does that kind of seem like a good fit for him?
Yeah. I was gonna say like with JVR and either Frederic or Heinen. I guess one of Frederic or Heinen's probably gets dropped to the fourth line. In this instance, not that either one deserves it, because I think those are two guys who have played pretty well recently. But that said, like, I also think they need to find a way to get more offense from the fourth line anyways. So dropping someone down is like, that's an added bonus to this, is it makes you a deeper team if Merkulov comes up and plays well and can handle a third line role. Because I think as much as we like, Lauko, Beecher, Steen, or, last night it was Patrick Brown, but like, it's a line that works hard, but also Jacob Lauko has 3 points and 0 goals in 23 games. Oskar Steen has 1 point in, I think, 19 games this season. Like, the Bruins they don't have enough high-end offensive talent to have a fourth line that doesn't score at all. So dropping someone like a Frederic or Heinen down, while it could be viewed as a demotion, it also lengthens your lineup and maybe brings some needed offense to that fourth line.
And size. I think Johnny Beach is a big boy, but Steen and Lauko aren't there. I mean, they're both pretty short. Nothing against short kings, but Frederic, I think, would be a little bit a better option size-wise down there in that situation. I also think, like, you don't want Merkulov to be on the fourth line. Bridget's just shaking her head in disgust.
I can't believe you just said short kings on this podcast. I'm just, wasn't expecting it, Brian. You caught me off guard.
I heard the phrase recently. I just had to go with it. But
did you hear from Pete Blackburn? I feel like he's the one who's trademarked it.
I'm pretty sure he uses it like every other tweet. So
and also like every episode of What Chaos.
Yeah. But also Merkulov is not an optimal player for the fourth line. I kind of want to see him with some skill. Beyond Frederick, honestly. But I can see why the first couple of games presuming he gets called up, that they want to just throw him to the first line or the second line. But if he were to play well on a third line role, I wouldn't waste too much time before seeing what could he do with some higher end skill, because again, iron sharpens iron a little bit.
You could see him on every line in the same game if Jim Montgomery just decides to just go for it again. So
that's true too. That is very true. Absolutely. So I think we're all in agreement here that like we'll be disappointed if he doesn't get an opportunity. Like,
it's the right time, right? Like other than this time, like obviously we don't know about injuries in the future, but this feels like the right time.
Do you see them not? Like, can we see the Bruins?
I do see a situation where they might not, but I don't even want to like get into that, because like I have an intuition that before like Friday morning or like before midday Friday, we'd hear that he gets called up. But like, I think that the only reason they wouldn't call him up is because if they just think Frederick's fine at center, we don't want to, we're not trying to complicate things. But I think he deserves a call up. That's not in the question at all.
Yeah, I also think like kind of where there's smoke, there's fire. Like Mark has good sources in Providence, and Rob Chalmers, who's at Ivan on Twitter, like he tweeted something similar. So, and those guys are like, they're all over Providence and the prospects. And I don't think someone lied to them. Like, certainly don't think they're making it up. So I think it's probably happening Friday, but we'll see. It's not final until it actually does happen. I'll also note Montgomery was asked about Merkulov, and obviously wasn't going to come on and say like whether they're calling him up or not, but he did say that he texts with Ryan Mougenel, Providence's coach, on a weekly basis, and they kind of exchange notes on like who are the top forwards, if we need someone, who are the top defensemen, how are guys doing, what are they improving, what do they need to work on. Someone goes down, it's Mougenel asking, hey, what's the message, what do you want to see them work on. And Montgomery said, like, and we've heard this from other people, that the most encouraging updates in Merkulov aren't just the points, it's he said like the way he's closing on plays in the defensive zone, his 200-foot game. And I think, especially with Montgomery, it's like when you're hearing that, if you're getting all those positive updates, in addition to all the points that we can see, like that sounds like someone that's about to be called up to me. So I think it's going to happen Friday, but we'll see.
Yeah. And there's really only one other thing that I think we wanted to talk about, guys. And do you want to touch on Poitras and World Juniors at all? I mean, there's a little bit of news there. It's not a whole lot, but yeah, I feel like we should touch on it a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, he has 2 goals in 2 games now. Canada beat Finland 6-2. I think bit of a down year for Finland. They're not as strong as they usually are. And then Canada just absolutely crushed Latvia 10-0. Both of Poitras' goals were kind of in garbage time. One was an empty netter. One was the goal that made it 10-0. So I think he's played well. I watched all of the first game against Finland and most of the second game against Latvia. And a little quieter against Latvia, but he's creating chances. He's had good chemistry with Matt Savoy, who's a Buffalo first-round pick, and has been one of his wingers most of the time. The big tests are going to be, they play Sweden in the group stage, Sweden, another one of the favorites, and then the knockout round. Like that to me is going to be more telling. These still kind of feel like warm-up games so far, for the top teams. Like I think just before we're recording, U.S. on Thursday, I think beat Switzerland 11-2. Like some of these games are just very lopsided. Like I know some people tweeted at me that they didn't love the fact that Poitras only had 1 point against, in a 10-0 blowout win. I just can't get worked up over how he plays against Latvia. Like, I quite frankly just don't really care about that. I want to see how he does in those bigger games to come.
How did he do against US in the warm-up round?
He did score. I missed that game, to be completely honest. I was out that day, but so I don't have like detailed notes, but from what I understand, like, he's played well. I mean, he's been in Canada's top 6 the whole time. So and they've kind of moved things around, and they're pulling a good joke on everyone by listing Macklin Celebrini as their 4th line center.
Yeah, I saw
he's
that.
Been the best player in the tournament so far. So yeah.
Well, it's he should be in their top 6. When you go down Canada's roster and you see all these, Q teams or, a couple NCAA teams, and then you see Matt Poitras' name and you see Boston NHL, you probably should be doing pretty well in this tournament. So,
well, I will say one of the things I noted that like doesn't show up on the score sheet is that these kids are all like, I mean, I'm calling them kids because they're still pretty young. Sorry if I'm not supposed to be calling them kids, but to me they are. And so these guys are all really high draft picks, and a lot of them are shoot first. And you kind of notice Poitras not getting chances on in some of these situations, because there have been several times where he was wide open. Like, I've seen him go backdoor a few times. He was open. He doesn't get the pass because the other player shoots. Like, I've noticed that I don't want to say selfish, but everybody has such a great shot. If they see an option to shoot, they shoot. They're not making the pass. So even though Poitras going to the right areas, sometimes he's not getting the puck. He's had the puck on his stick less because, and by the way, these guys all have something to prove out of this too. They're all trying to make the NHL. They're all drafted besides Celebrini, obviously. So they all have their own little like thing to prove. And I kind of started to notice that a lot of them are shoot first, not pass first, where Poitras might be the other way around. And that has led to him getting fewer scoring chances for sure.
Yeah, he set up Matt Savoy for like 3 or 4 just grade A chances in the Finland game, and got one himself set up by Savoy, and just none of them went in. Finland's goalie was playing really well until like the dam finally broke a little, but I thought he played really well in that game, and like I said, maybe a little quieter against Latvia, but that was a scrimmage, like.
Yeah.
And it was just way better.
And by the way, they run the score up for a reason. They're not just being mean. Like, they run the score up because it does sometimes affect the tiebreakers. So like the better your goal scored is, you might beat a team that you're head to head with. So they're blowing up the score sheet because it does turn out to matter sometimes. So it's not just like being mean, like stop beating up on Latvia. You have to do it.
Yeah. No, I mean, look, ultimately Poitras has found the back of the net a couple times, whether it's, pre-tournament, empty net, garbage time, whatever. He's seen the puck go in. Hopefully that continues. The only way the Bruins lose this experiment of sending him down to World Juniors is, as I said in the past, if he were to get hurt, or if he just goes down and for whatever reason his confidence doesn't increase because he's not scoring, and he's snake bitten down in World Juniors. Then you got to go up to the NHL and, be a top 2 center. It's like, you have to kind of produce. So, they're betting on him to do so. He's going to do so. He has been, but he hasn't probably been dominating, maybe just yet, but there's much tournament to go. So yeah, definitely worth keeping an eye on. And yeah, and for us Americans, like, the US team is the betting favorite, and they're expected.
And for anyone who likes Boston College, just
right,
you're gonna get a good chance to see a lot of guys from BC. So,
and what's his name? Christ, the BU defenseman,
Lane Hudson.
Yeah, Lane Hudson.
He's got a little bit of Cale Makar in him, the way he kind of just gets in is kind of that north-south player.
Yeah, the overtime winner he scored in that exhibition game against Canada was filthy. Like, just goes down to the ice to take away, steal the puck, and then just like toe drags it to the front and snipes top corner.
Brian, don't get Scott going about a BU player. Like, don't bring one up and then just be like, we're supposed to end this podcast.
Do you want to know how I can get Scott to stop talking about a BU player? When you mention that it's a future Montreal Canadiens player.
True, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I think there's going to be a lot of teams that are going to be wondering why they didn't draft Lane Hudson in the first round. He fell until late second to Montreal, and
that's insane.
It's because of his height. If he was 2 inches taller, he would have been a top 15 pick.
Yeah, I
get it. No one,
guys.
Short defensemen are out. No one wants short defensemen.
Short kings. They're short.
When they're as talented as Lane Hudson, I don't know. I think he's gonna be just fine in the NHL.
Yeah, he'll be fine. He's gonna be good. He was a steal in the second round, that's for sure. So anyway, that's enough about BU. Lane Hudson.
Mm-hmm. That's probably enough about anything this episode.
Yeah, I agree. I'm hungry.
One other quick thing I was going to say on World Juniors. Another Bruins prospect, Dan Zlashmelis, is Latvia's captain and first-line center, which is great for him. Unfortunately, they had zero chance against Canada. But
and are you gonna tell people where he goes to school?
Where's that, Bridget?
UMass Amherst.
Indeed,
yes. So there we go.
He was starting to play better, like right before break too. He got a delayed start because there were eligibility issues, which I could go on about that because I think the NCAA is very silly when it comes to this stuff. But so he missed like the first several weeks of the season, but had a few points right before break. So. Another guy who could use World Juniors to kind of springboard into the second half.
Have BU and BC played each other this year?
Not yet. They have 3 games against each other in like a 2-week span. At the end of January and then the first round of the Beanpot.
Yeah, because I was gonna say, they're 1-2 in the country right now, aren't they?
Yep. That's gonna be like an awesome 2-week stretch.
I know what we could do. We could go to the Beanpot together. That's how I can give you guys your Christmas gifts. You can all go to the Beanpot.
Perfect. Very good. All right. So I guess, so we'll be dropping this on Friday morning, correct?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
Okay. So then, all right. So yeah. Well, thank you all for listening. Enjoy your weekend. Any final announcements? Scott, you looked at
Happy New Year. We won't. I don't think we'll be dropping another episode before New Year. So
that's right. How silly if they forget that. I don't know. Between Christmas and New Year's, like, does anybody know what day it is?
It all just blends together. It's just like holiday 2 weeks. Like,
yeah. Exactly. Thanks for pointing that out, Scott.
I'm in the office today, and literally the only other 2 people here are Mike Cadlick and Andy Hart, who are filling in on the afternoon show. I have not seen another person, like not another body.
No, nobody's there. No.
Yeah. That's a good point. Yeah, I hope you all have a wonderful. Hope everybody can reflect on 2023, and then of course have a happy New Year and look forward to 2024. But yes, so thank you all for listening, and we will talk to you very soon. Hey guys, thanks for watching the Skate Podcast. If you want to see more of our videos, visit our playlist.
Not in front of a screen? You can listen to us on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.
Don't forget to follow us on social media. And if you enjoyed this video, please don't forget to give us a thumbs up, subscribe to our channel, and leave a comment.